All right, everybody, thank you for joining us tonight. We should be live on our Facebook and YouTube pages right now. I'm just going to give it another 30 seconds or so while we wait for a few people to see our live video and join us this evening. I see we also have guests with us in the webinar. We'll be starting in a minute. All right, we are recording. We're live streaming on Facebook and YouTube now. So good evening and thank you for joining us for a tenant protection webinar hosted by Assemblymember Rodneyse, Bichotte, Hermelyn. I'm Sabrina Rezi, her Director of Communications and Legislation, and I will be moderating the event this evening. Tonight we are celebrating the delivery of some justice for the Floyd family in Minneapolis. We also realize that systemic inequities exist all over the country. The housing crisis in New York is a prime example of that. Our panel will brief you on what tenants should know about the Housing Eviction Moratorium and the next steps once the moratorium is lifted. We will be addressing your questions at the end of the panel. However, I encourage you to drop them in the Q&A chat box throughout the evening if you're with us in the webinar so that our staff and presenters can field as many as possible. We will address raised hands at the end of the panel. Those who are watching on Facebook and YouTube can also use the chat feature there, which will be monitored intermittently by our staff. You will hear from Assemblymember Bichotte Hermelyn in a moment with news about the $2.4 billion pot of emergency relief included in the New York State budget, which was passed by the state legislature earlier this month. Assemblymember Bichotte Hermelyn proudly voted yes on this budget, which protects the most vulnerable members of our society and sets Brooklyn on a trajectory to economic recovery for all. Now I will turn it over to our Assemblymember for a few words.
Good afternoon. I am Assemblymember Rodneyse Bichotte Hermelyn, and I represent the 42nd Assembly District, which includes Flatbush, East Flatbush, and Douglas Park. I'm the chair of the Brooklyn Democratic Party. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge our esteemed panelists, Tyrone McDonald from NHS Brooklyn, Jordan Fried and Monique Thomas, DHCR, Paul Leroux and Humbert Wong, Brooklyn Legal Services, and Cynthia Norris from Housing Justice for All. I also would like to thank my staff for organizing this event and all of our attendees for tuning in. We are here today because there is a housing crisis in New York City. Every New Yorker deserves access to a safe, affordable place to live. We need access to affordable housing, but that is increasingly hard to find. Wages for the city's renters have stagnated over the last 20 years, increasing by less than 15% after adjusting for inflation. During the same period, the average monthly rent for an apartment in New York City increased by almost 40%. Our office fields housing assistance inquiries almost every day. I hear your needs and I'm here to help you. Housing issues have touched every family I know, even my own. In the State Assembly, we worked hard all year on legislation that would bring help to our communities. The state budget, which was agreed upon earlier this month, includes a total of $2.4 billion, including $2.3 billion in federal funds and $100 million in state funding to expand rental assistance relief eligibility beyond those covered by the federal rent relief program. So if you are struggling to pay your rent, I want you to be first in line for these funds. The budget also includes funds for home ownership relief, Many small homeowners have tenants living with them. We cannot afford to have any New Yorker be displaced. That's why we include $600 million in federal funds to provide assistance with mortgage, utility, or home energy payments, and extended the homeowner mortgage forbearance period to December 31st, 2021. NHS and our panelists from Brooklyn Legal Services, DHCR, and Housing Justice for All are here to help you navigate the housing crisis along with my office. We recognize that the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated and exacerbated the housing crisis and made it difficult for many people to make ends meet. I hope you will listen along this evening and reach out to my office or our experts with any questions you may have. We are always available to help. Again, this is Assemblymember Rodneyse Bichotte. Thank you again for tuning in.
Okay, everybody hear me? Now we're going to hand it over to Tyrone McDonald at NHS Brooklyn. NHS Brooklyn is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that creates and preserves affordable housing by providing opportunities for homeownership, education, financial assistance, and community leadership. Led by local residents and guided by local needs, we work in partnership with government and business to revitalize underserved neighborhoods. Thank you to NHS for partnering with us for this event. And Tyrone, I will hand it over to you now.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Sabrina. Once again, I would like to thank the Office of Assemblyperson Bichotte Hermelyn for actually partnering with us. This is very important. It's actually a serious issue. Neighborhood housing services, we actually have been doing work within the 42nd Assembly District and beyond since 1982. And as it was stated briefly earlier, our mission is to revitalize and sustain communities. And what we do is we do this by providing resources, both financial and as well as education in promoting home ownership and also providing resources to tenants and also homeowners. I'm sure many of you out there are tenants and you're pretty anxious. It's been a long year with COVID. You probably lost income, probably been out of work, worked intermittently, or probably, we're just focused on the well-being of your family, as many of us have to, go through many changes, many radical changes, and I salute you. What we do at NHS as far as tenants and tenant support services is that if anyone have any questions concerning their lease, concerning tenant rights, we're there to clarify those issues for you. As you know, since 2019, there's been a major changes in tenant law, and many tenants actually getting up to speed with that. And, we're here on the front lines, to try to help clarify certain things you probably didn't know, some changes you may not be aware of. We also assist residents with SCREE and DREE. And SCREE is essentially a senior rent freeze for tenants living in rent stabilized apartments, and DREE is for disabled persons living in rent stabilized apartments. So we do assist you in terms of filling out those applications. We also assist with Housing Connect, which is a lottery, which is very popular in terms of, we help you navigate that. And we give workshops on a regular basis, highlighting certain developments, throughout Brooklyn. Recently, there was a senior development in the 42nd District on New York Avenue, New York and Farragut, in which, we work closely with the assembly person in terms of notifying people about that. For many of you out there who are tenants who may want to graduate to home ownership and may want to own your apartment, condo, or co-op, we also assist with that and provide you with the resources, the skills to maintain and preserve your home, and just to know how to get you from point A to point Z. We have a wonderful webinar here. As you know, due to COVID and due to moratoriums, and some of the moratoriums about to be released, the court's actually about to get started. So there's many things that many of our speakers will provide you so you can be better prepared. And just before I go, let me just share with you some information on our office. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach us. Okay. All right. Our office is temporarily closed for in-person visits. However, persons can visit the office to drop off items or pick up items. Our office is at 2806 Church Avenue between Nostrand and Rogers. And we also have a Canarsie office at 9701 Avenue L. For any information on any upcoming events, you can go to nhsbrooklyn.org, whether it's tenant events that we have coming up, or first-time home buyer, or financial awareness. And if you need to reach me, if you have any personal questions that need to be addressed, I can reach 718-469-4679. Once again, that's 469-4679. And I'll probably wait a few seconds so you could probably some of you can take a screenshot of this information. Okay, thank you. And I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to turn it back over to Sabrina. And thank you very much. And we look forward to serving you.
Thank you, Tyrone. We appreciate your partnership. Okay, so next we'll be starting the panel with the team from DHCR. We have Monique Thomas, who's a senior attorney with the New York State Homes and Community Renewals Tenant Protection Unit. Monique works closely with tenants, owners, and advocacy agencies to ensure compliance with New York's rent regulation laws. She also serves as TPU's FOIL officer and has served in New York State government for almost a decade. Prior to working with the TPU, she was an assistant counsel at New York State's Office of Children and Family Services in the Juvenile Detention Unit. Monique's public service journey began at the Legal Aid Society of Northeastern New York, where she helped New Yorkers resolve education foreclosure and family law issues. She's a graduate of the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. And we also have Jordan Freed, who's a senior attorney with the New York State Homes and Community Renewals Tenant Protection Unit. Jordan handles cases ranging from rent overcharges and building registrations to harassment and the maintenance of essential services, all in an effort to ensure landlords are compliant with New York State's rent-regulated housing laws. Prior to joining TPU in 2013, Jordan attended the New England School of Law. And we have Joseph Palozola, sorry. He's the Vice President of Intergovernmental Relations for New York State Homes and Community Renewal. He's focused on federal housing issues related to the New York State Housing Finance Agency and the State of New York Mortgage Agency. He directs the agency's legislative initiatives and acts as the agency liaison to elected officials and government entities throughout the state of New York. Previously, he served in the State Attorney General's office as an Assistant Attorney General and as Deputy Chief of Staff, where he handled a variety of legal policy and managerial issues. He's a graduate of CUNY and the City University of New York Law School. So we're very fortunate to have all of you with us this evening, and I'll hand it over to the DHCR team now.
Great. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the state's Tenant Protection Unit, I would like to thank the Assemblymember in our office for hosting this event, as well as welcome those who are listening in. Again, my name is Jordan Freed, and I'm a senior attorney for the New York State Division of Homes and Community Renewals Tenant Protection Unit. I'm going to start off by explaining what TPU is, what our mission and goals are, and what our investigative process looks like. Then I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Monique Thomas, to speak more about TPU. So to start, what is TPU? TPU, which was created in 2012, is a state agency that proactively investigates allegations of patterns and practices of violations of the Rent Stabilization Code and Rent Stabilization Law. TPU's jurisdiction is limited to rent-regulated properties, but there are over 1 million rent-regulated properties in New York City alone. TPU does not represent tenants or tenant associations, but what we do is work for the benefit of the state, and the state has a significant interest in tenants' housing rights. Much of the work TPU does is tailored towards protecting tenants' rights and ensuring that landlords are in compliance with the relevant housing laws. Next, what is TPU's mission? TPU's mission is to preserve affordable housing by detecting and curtailing patterns and practices of landlord illegality through audits, investigations, and impactful legal actions. TPU's mission is also to inform tenants and landlords of their rights and responsibilities under the rent regulation laws. How does TPU investigate alleged wrongdoing? TPU uses all available resources from internal registration data to complaint histories and intergovernmental partnerships and public record searches to investigate alleged wrongdoing. TPU works closely with partners like elected officials' offices, legal aid services, and tenant advocacy groups through referrals. When our partners are aware of constituents in their districts or neighborhoods who are presenting the same or similar issues with a particular landlord or in a specific building, TPU may engage the landlord in an effort to obtain relief for a large number of tenants. TPU also works closely with other state agencies like the New York State Attorney General's Office, as well as city agencies like the Department of Building and Housing Preservation and Development. I'm now going to hand things over to Monique Thomas to talk some more about the types of cases TPU takes and how to get in contact with us. Thank you again.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Monique Thomas. Once again, I'm a senior attorney at DHCR. So as Jordan started to tell you, our mission is to help tenants in New York State. So the types of cases that we usually take are pattern and practices of illegality throughout an owner's building or portfolio of buildings. So what does that mean? That means that if a landlord is systematically harassing tenants through construction, systematically harassing tenants through failing to provide them with leases or overcharging them, then that's the type of case that TPU will take. We focus on harassment, overcharges, any failure to repair for tenants. We focus on those sort of things. In the past, some of our investigations have actually led to criminal charges against landlords. So the way that we usually work our cases is that we investigate and we will then come up with some sort of settlement with the owner. And typically during those settlements, we monitor compliance to make sure that the owners are no longer engaging in the illegal activity and no longer harassing tenants. So with that being said, as we all know, the eviction moratorium is currently set to expire in May, on May 1st, 2021. We are not sure what this will mean for tenants, but we want you all to know that the Tenant Protection Unit is here if you need any assistance. If you feel like you're being harassed by your landlord in any way, please feel free to contact our offices. The best way to reach us is through tpuinfo@nyshcr.org. Again, I'll say it, it's tpuinfo@nyshcr.org. That's the best way to reach us. We also have borough offices in every single borough. The most popular one that most people know is in Gertz Plaza in Queens, in Jamaica, Queens at 92-31 Union Hall. So you can also go there if you have any questions or inquiries. So since TPU we usually do group cases and we do larger portfolios. If you have a issue with your particular apartment or your particular landlord in an apartment, you can also file a case with the Office of Rent Administration. They are the ones who handle single cases. So for example, if you have not been given a renewal lease and you need one, you can file a form with the Office of Rent Administration and try to get that renewal lease. If you feel like have been overcharged, you can also file a form for overcharge. If you feel like there are repairs that need to be made, you can file a form once again for those repairs. And if it is found that those repairs have not been done, then you can get a rent reduction. So I implore you, if you do have any issues, to please feel free to contact the TPU. And again, you can contact us by email. You can also look online at nyshcr.org, and you can find information about us. And you can also contact the Assemblyman if you need to reach us. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
We hear you loud and clear.
We can hear
Great.
you.
Thank you. I'm Joe Palazzolo. I'm the Vice President of Intergovernmental Relations at HCR. Thanks, guys, for that. Just quickly, so everyone may or may not know that HCR is a bit of a conglomeration of the state housing entities. It's DHCR, which is the line agency which oversees the rent stabilized portfolio. It's the Housing Finance Agency, which finances low and moderate income housing. It's the State Mortgage Agency, which provides mortgages for low and moderate income first-time home buyers, the New York State Housing Trust Fund, the Affordable Housing Corporation. And I'd just like to thank Assemblywoman Bichotte, Hermelyn, Governor Cuomo, and our wonderful Commissioner, Ruth Ann Wisnauskas, for a great budget this year. And then I'd just like to sort of hit on 3 points with regard to housing and COVID relief. Some of you may be familiar with the just wrapping up New York State rental relief program. The second would be the forthcoming federal rental relief program, which will be administered by our sister agency, OTDA, the Office of Disability and Temporary Assistance. And then a New York State mortgage relief program, which is coming via, again, federal monies. So the New York State rental relief program, which ended on about March 24th, provided just over $45 million in payments to landlords representing 17,000 households. We received a total of over 102,000 applications. And of those, we've received almost 6,000 appeals. So the legislation was written in a very targeted way, in that it provided up to $100 million in rental assistance, but it was really put to folks that were at most risk. There were parameters with regard to AMI, average median income, which was you had to be under 80%. You had to be rent burdened before COVID relief. And then there was a phase 2, which changed that a little bit and opened up the program a little bit more. And as I said, that program ended and it's basically wrapped up. So we're looking forward to the forthcoming rental relief program, which is going to be, like I said, administered by OTDA, which is going to be a larger program, a more generous program, a richer program. I think we expect it in the next month, probably less than 4 weeks, but I would say definitely within 4 weeks. And it's going to provide a much longer timeline for folks that have been affected. It will provide more money to cover rental payments. It also will include utilities and probably some other costs. That's all being worked out now as we speak. And then probably sometime in May, towards the end of May, there's going to be a mortgage assistance program, which again will help single-family homeowners and co-op and condo owners with their rental payments. I will tell you that I just want to give you some numbers, and I want to read them so I have them correct. The second program, rental program that I talked about, that will be coming was for over $27 billion. And we expect New York State to get about $1.1 billion of that number. The Homeowner Assistance Fund was for, let's see, I'm sorry. Each state will receive a minimum of $50 million. And then there is a formula that, based on population, on COVID impact, will increase that number. We expect New York State to receive about $572 million. So that's a good amount of money. There will be other monies coming that are directly related to housing or tangentially related to housing with regard to emergency Section 8 vouchers, rural housing assistance, homeless assistance, other utility assistance, and housing counseling. So again, I thank all of our elected officials, the legislature, our officials in Washington. We have a significant amount of resources. I hope it's enough. Not sure if it's enough, but it's certainly, we're in a much better position than we were just a few months ago. I think that's what I have for you.
Thank you, Joseph. That was very informative. Before we move over to the Brooklyn Legal Services team, I did want to note that Tyrone answered a question for us in the Q&A. We had somebody on Facebook asking if NHS only assists Brooklyn residents or if they're open for all. And Tyrone said that they assist Brooklyn residents. However, we would not turn someone away if they feel comfortable working with us. And they also want to inform you that there are other NHS offices in other boroughs. And I'll just drop the NHS information in the chat for anybody who wants to reach out and didn't see that when Tyrone had it up earlier. And then also we have our Q&A open. So if you're participating in the webinar, I encourage you to drop the questions in the Q&A and our panelists can take a look at that. We will read the Q&A and take other questions from people who may have their hands up at the end of the panel. Now we're going to move over to Brooklyn Legal Services team. We have Paul Leroux, who's a staff attorney in the housing unit of Brooklyn Legal Services. In that role, Paul represents and advises low-income tenants facing eviction in New York City Housing Court and NYCHA termination hearings as part of the Universal Access to Counsel program. Paul previously worked as program director at the United States Conference of Mayors and taught civics to fifth graders in Boston. Originally, sorry, just lost it. The share screen popped up. Originally from Bakersfield, Vermont, Paul is a graduate of Harvard College and New York University School of Law, where he was a Root Tilden Kern Public Service Scholar. And with him this evening is Humbert Wong, who's a senior staff attorney in the housing unit of Brooklyn Legal Services for the last 6 years. In that role, Humbert represents and advises low-income tenants facing eviction in New York City Housing Court as part of the Tenants' Rights Coalition. Prior to Brooklyn Legal Services, Humbert represented Guantanamo Bay detainees and individuals placed on the no-fly list. As a native of New York City, Humbert is a graduate of St. John's University and the City University of New York School of Law. Thank you guys for joining us this evening. I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us, first and foremost. Once again, I'm Humbert Wong. I'm a senior attorney at Brooklyn Legal Services. I'm going to turn the mic over to my colleague in a little bit. But as attorneys in the housing unit, we deal with housing court on a regular basis. And with it, housing court deals with 3 issues, really. Non-payments, holdovers, and HPs, which is basically repairs. And a lot of what happens in housing courts deal with evictions. How do we define evictions? Evictions is basically the forceful but legal means to remove a person and possessions from the apartment. And how would a landlord get to accomplishing an eviction? So a couple things must be in place before that happens, right? So there must be an existing housing court case. So the case that would take place most likely for the eviction would be a non-payment or a holdover case. Now, the next thing you need is a judgment. What is a judgment? A judgment is a legal recognition that one person owes money to another party. The judgment can stay with you for up to as many as 20 years. And the other way to get a judgment too is in a holdover case where you can get a judgment for possession, a recognition that one person is entitled to the possession of the apartment. Now, how do you get a judgment? You could get a judgment in one or two ways. One, you can agree. You can agree with your landlord that the landlord should get the judgment. Now, why would you do that? You would do that because sometimes it would be more advantageous to you. If you realize what you're asking for example, might be just more time. A judgment, agreeing to one can give you more time than you would if you presented it to before a judge, which would be the second option. Now, once you get that, once the landlord gets that judgment, what would the landlord do with it? The landlord would then send it over to the marshal. The marshal would then give you something known as a marshal's notice, which is the picture on the right. The marshal's notice would inform you of how much time you would have before an eviction can take place. Usually, nowadays, 14. In some rare instances, it can still be 6. I would say check with an attorney. Definitely call the marshal if you get it as well, too. So you could just check up with it and make sure that the eviction is taking place as when it should take place. And as noted, it has to be a marshal's eviction, which means it has to be a licensed marshal by the city, which is only a good small number of it. To the next slide, please. So remember, in order for an eviction to take place, there must be an active housing court case. So is housing court even open? Yes, housing court is available. It is done primarily through online. If you're a party, you can file things online. You can appear before a judge online. However, if you do have limited technological, electronical capabilities, you can appear in person, but it's highly advised against. And if you take a look to the right, that's a picture of King's Housing Court. Okay, so as we talked about a little bit earlier, there is a possibility that you can have a moratorium in place as of now. And that's because New York State passed the Emergency Eviction and Foreclosure Prevention Act. So if you were eligible for a hardship declaration, the act would allow you to stay your case up until May 1st. Now, that hardship can be both health or financial. And the hardship declaration looks like the form in the picture to the left. And you would complete this and you would forward it over to housing court and they would stay your case. So is housing court still in court appearances currently? The answer is yes. For which cases? So even with the moratorium, nuisances cases are still on the docket. Cases in which there were judgments before COVID are not moving forward with the eviction itself, but things in the case itself can proceed. Also, obviously, if you have not filed a hardship declaration, those cases can proceed as well and evictions can take place. Okay, so what if I don't have an eviction threat against me, but rather I'm just trying to get repairs during this time? Is repair still available during COVID? The answer is yes. What should you do? You should document the conditions that you believe needs to be repaired. So usually is if you see mold, you see a leak, maybe a video might be best for that. If you don't have heat, take notes on what the temperature is based on the thermometer every day. And if you were to take the landlord to court, you must first have to let the landlord know that there is a problem. That only makes sense. So how would you do that? You would do that through a written notice. You can do it verbally as well too, but I would not recommend that because at least if you do it through a written notice, you have some documentation. So text messaging, emails would be great. A handwritten note would be great too. All three would be fine. Then another thing is you can also support your argument for the need for repairs through 311. What can 311 do? 311 can get someone from HPD, Housing Preservation and Development, to come and evaluate your apartment and see if there's anything that HPD finds to be a violation, something that's defective. So violations can be A, B, C, A being the lowest, C being the most hazardous, and the recommended times to get the landlord to have it repaired. After you're done with that, landlord's still not making the repairs, then you can file an HP petition. An HP petition can be easily filed through Just Fix. Just Fix is a great website which allows you to just put in information that you have, and they generate it into a form. They mail it out to the landlord and to the court, get it filed, so it can be done within the convenience of your apartment. Now, a question that often gets brought up is, I'm paying for rent right now. However, I don't believe the money that I'm paying merits the apartment that I'm getting in the condition that the apartment is. And I very reasonable feeling. However, our office would generally, not in all cases, but generally advise that you shouldn't do that. If you are successful in getting your repairs, great. If you are going to take your landlord to court, and you can do that as well too. You can also go to DHCR. You can try to get a rent reduction for any defective conditions that have been found at the courts. And we advise from withholding rent also, because that can lead to, for example, a non-payment case or a holdover case, which can put you in the threat of an eviction. And now, Paul, you want to take it over?
Yeah, of course. The reason that we're all here today to give you this information, as opposed to a few weeks ago, a few months ago, is that on May 3rd, 2021, the laws are going to change. So the EEFPA that Humbert talked about, the quote unquote moratorium on evictions in New York State, is going to be lifted unless the legislature or the governor and the legislative and executive branches are both here today. So you never know. Extend protections in the next 2 weeks. There will be a resumption and an expansion of housing court operations such that all eviction cases can theoretically resume on the first business day after May 1st, which is May 3rd, 2021. And many, many tenants could be evicted. Now, that doesn't mean that housing court is going to suddenly open for in-person operations. It's still going to be a virtual first court. It's still going to be very limited in-person operations. And so we're not encouraging anyone to go rush to housing court on Monday the 3rd, but instead to take the following steps to affirmatively protect themselves. The first of these is to fill out the hardship declaration. Now, why would you fill out the hardship declaration now if you haven't already, when it could expire on May 3rd? The reason is we don't know. It could get extended. It's very possible that it will get extended. It also is a way of signaling to the judge and to the court that you are facing a hardship in this pandemic and getting it in writing. The second thing that you can do is you can fill out a federal hardship declaration. Last September, the CDC, that public health agency that we've all come to know in the last year, issued its own eviction moratorium. That eviction moratorium is a lot narrower than the New York State one. It only stops you from being evicted. It doesn't stop your case. It doesn't apply to every single person that the New York State one would apply to. And there's actually some questions, although not in New York State, about whether or not the way that it was issued was proper. And so we're concerned if that's the only protection you have, but our position is that it's better than nothing. And so we encourage you to visit the CDC's website and go ahead and file that CDC hardship declaration with the court. If you have an existing housing court case and you haven't answered it yet, so if you got a petition in the mail or under your door or on your door, or if somebody came and served you by hand, you have to answer that, or else you could be held in default and you could automatically lose. The way to answer your petition right now in virtual times is to call the clerk's office. The housing court clerk's number in Brooklyn is 347-404-9201. It's 347-404-9201. That's the number on the slide here. And sometimes they don't pick up the first time, or sometimes it rings 30, 40 times. Just keep calling them. It's very, very important that when you answer, you mention that you're facing difficulties because of COVID, if that's what's true. The next piece of it is, once you're actually in court, we encourage you to raise something called the Tenant Safe Harbor Act. The Tenant Safe Harbor Act is an act that the legislature passed last year that means that if you can prove that you're only in arrears because of COVID, right? So if every single dollar is related to you lost your job, your roommate lost their job, and otherwise you would be totally okay, then they can't evict you for that. If not, what they'll do is they'll separate out the judgment. So some of it is a money judgment, which they can't evict you for, and some of it is a possessory judgment, which they can evict you for. But if everything is from COVID, then they can't evict you for that right now under the Tenant Safe Harbor Act. So we encourage you to raise that if it's true. The next piece of it is what Joseph talked about, which is, we call it the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. That's that big pot of money for tenants in the New York State budget. The application is coming soon, and despite our typo in our slide, we're encouraging you to raise this in court, that you are applying for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Once that application actually goes into effect, which, as Joseph said, will probably be sometime in the next month or so. Once you've applied, there's an automatic stay on your case. Once you've applied and alerted the judge, there will be an automatic stay on your case. But since it's possible that the moratorium could be lifted before the program is in effect, we're concerned that some people might fall through the cracks, and we really don't want that. But to the extent that you intend to apply for this program and it's just not available yet, you should let the judge know about that. For those tenants who have existing relationships with HRA because of public assistance or other benefits, they should speak with their caseworkers or check out Access HRA's website for information about how to apply for a one-shot deal application. That's also something that our office assists many of our clients with. And it's also possible, if you're not already in the HRA system, to get into the HRA system for a one-shot deal. But we encourage you to certainly do that with the assistance of someone who's really familiar with the process, to not try to do it yourself, because that sometimes goes a little slowly. And if you aren't caught up with it, you can get a one-shot deal and it won't resolve your case. So we encourage you to do that with the assistance of the people at HRA, or even better, with an attorney. Finally, there is another fund, another pot of money that the legislature passed also this spring, called the Excluded Workers Fund. That application is coming soon. That is for folks, many of whom are in immigrant communities that couldn't get unemployment and couldn't get their stimulus payments like many other people were able to. And so the New York State government has sought to correct that and provide this pot of money to people. The application for that is coming soon. I would encourage you to reach out to your community organizations and to the Assembly member's office about that. Now, missing from this is the most important piece of advice that we can give you about knowing your rights for housing court, and that is to ask for a lawyer. Everyone in housing court has the right to ask for a lawyer. Many people in New York City will get a free lawyer provided by people like me and Humbert through our organizations that we work with on a day-to-day basis. What can a lawyer get you? A lawyer can get you more time for your case. A lawyer is going to be familiar with the legal rules. They're going to be able to advocate for you to the judge, and they're going to be able to find those pots of money, whether it's ERAP, one-shot deals, charitable assistance, and they're going to be able to put together that package for you to pay off your arrears. So it's really, really important that if you go to court, virtually, in person, on the phone, whatever, you ask for a lawyer. We are right now being assigned cases by the court. So the fastest way to get a lawyer is through the court process and asking for a lawyer. We do have other programs that you can see up on the screen here that sort of are designed to catch people that aren't currently in court. And so if you think that you fall into one of these groups or have an issue that's related to what we've discussed here in terms of our special priorities, you should certainly feel free to contact us. And our contact information is here. Just like many other offices, ours are temporarily closed to visitors, but we do have 3 offices.
Paul, you're muted. We just lost you through you. Go back about 10 seconds.
Yeah, so we have 3 offices around Brooklyn, and we also have an advice hotline. And if you want to speak to a lawyer, the fastest way to do that is to call our advice hotline.
Thank you guys. I enjoyed, was that a My Cousin Vinny slide you guys snuck in there?
We had a Mario one too, and somehow that got deleted.
This is the best presentation I've seen this week, so thanks for that.
Juno, don't forget Juno.
We have, next up we have Housing Justice for All. Cynthia Norris is joining us. She is the lead organizer at New York Communities for Change, focusing on housing campaigns. She has worked with Housing Justice for All and tenant leaders in Brooklyn to strengthen tenants' rights, win an eviction moratorium, and make sure that everyone has the right to stay housed during the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. And she can speak with you about the campaign, how tenants can organize in their buildings, how to form a tenant association, and she'll touch on what resources there are to support tenants. So I will hand it over to Cynthia now.
Hey y'all, my internet's been acting up. Can you guys hear me?
We hear you.
Great. So I'm gonna turn my video off just in case the internet get crazy. I've been dealing with this all day. Apologize ahead of time. So again, thank you for having me. My name is Cynthia. I work for New York Communities for Change and within the coalition of Housing Justice for All. Right now, our key things that we're fighting for are just cause eviction, cancel rent. Well, I'm out of breath, sorry. Just cause eviction, cancel rent, housing access voucher program, cancel mortgages, supportive housing, and invest in our New York Act program, the renewal. Right now, it's been a shift because of the pandemic and things changed drastically. So it took us a while to get back up and we're up and running with members. We're organizing back how we used to, a little bit different, just over Zoom. And also, we outside still, but a lot of our members that, a lot of our older members that can't go outside is still cooperating with us. They still join in. So as I take you guys on a journey with me, so how can tenants organize in their buildings? Right now, the most important thing is building relationships in your buildings. A lot of tenants lived in their buildings for probably 5 or plus years or more. Some people live there for decades. And I'm pretty sure you may know 1 or 2 neighbors. You want to talk to them. You want to build a tenant association in your building. Find out what are the real issues that's in your building or that's in your area. You want to also find out who's the elected officials that's in your area. And you want to get to know each other, right? You want to find out who can research, who's good with researching. You want to find out who's good with, talking, who knows a lot about everybody in the building. Those are the people that can put you on. You wanna have built floor captains where folks are, knocking door to door to check in with folks. We are still in this pandemic. A lot of folks are under pressure. They going into depression. Folks are dying. You want to just do check-ins with them, and also find out who's paying rent, who's not paying rent. Warn members, because we do have a lot of undocumented members, warn them not to give y'all money to people that's just saying, oh, I'm going to give you a rent relief. I'm going to help you with your rent. Because there's a lot of people out there that's knocking on people's doors and telling them these things. And, telling them that they got to pay for a vaccine when everybody knows it's free. Want to be careful with things. But with organizing your building, you want to make sure that y'all have building meetings. I know we have COVID, but Zoom work, Facebook work. Y'all want to build a Facebook group. Y'all want to see what other buildings that's tied under have the same landlord issue. See what they're going through. You get call 311 if you have an issue. Join NYCC, join Housing Justice for All, and fight back. We've been doing a lot of fight back. Court. It's a lot going on. That it's a lot of different ways to, organize a building. The smallest ways to organize and get help was always 311. But you always have to you got to get floor captains to build phone tree lists to call those folks and check in. You want to make sure that you find out stories and help teach the tenant that giving a story helps the next person to boost their energy to give their story. Not everybody wants to tell their information. A lot of people are uncomfortable about not being able to pay rent, when in fact it's thousands and thousands of people. The numbers are going up every day. Where homelessness are going up, where folks cannot even afford to pay rent because lost a job or whatnot. When folks are just scared to tell their story, but when that one person stand up, it helps for the rest of the folks behind them. And want to collect different stories that's tied to many different campaigns, so you could be able to express this. You could call Channel 12, find out what's going on when you have no heat. You call the heat hotline, get them involved when when the repairs are not getting done, and so forth and so on, right? And that's how you just form it. Like, you form your tenant association that way, right? You get your local leaders involved. You get involved in a community board. It's many different ways depending on the issue, right? And then you also rely on places like NYCC. We fight against almost everything, right? But in this case, it's housing, right? So, we don't give money to people. We don't give housing to people. But what we do is fight to preserve more affordable housing in the community. We make sure we give members out the tools to fight back, to make sure that we could preserve all this affordable housing. We wouldn't be having to fight for all this, right? Folks wouldn't be getting kicked out, right? And our mission is to, make sure that they push this deadline back. Right now, we got till May 1st for the moratorium, and that can't help us. We got so many members that's right now scared, they walking with so much on their shoulders every day. They wake up knowing that they're not working, became teachers overnight and still have to figure it out. You know what they do? You got to keep pushing because somebody's in a situation way better than you. You tell your story, vocalize your story on Facebook, push it through social media like Twitter and many different apps so that the next person can stand up and fight back, right? I would love to show you guys our video that we put together, but for some reason it wasn't allowing me to send as a link. So I will share with folks later. But yeah. So right now, when you're organizing in your buildings, you want to make sure that folks know about the rent relief that we fought for. Folks know about the excluded worker funds that's going to come into play. Yeah, as of yet, but it's coming, and this is the time to organize. Summertime, a lot of people that work in schools are home, where a lot of people are still home, and this is the time to get folks involved. A lot of people that don't know about it would love to be involved with this, and this is how you grow. Hey, it only goes with the person can say yes or no. I don't want to talk about it. Okay, you go to the next person. Because when they start seeing in your building that things are getting done, they want to now follow and get involved. It's okay for people to say no. You got to keep pushing, right? And that's what we do, right? We organize with tenants. Tenants is the power. Tenants are the people that makes the people power, and that's how we do it. We also, sometimes when elected officials are on top of the things that we are pressed for, we go to their house and explain why. We use those tenant stories to explain why we are here. We only showing you why because we need your help. We voted folks in, want to make sure that they could do as much as possible for us, right? I'm sorry, I got kind of nervous, so I just don't know. What else? Yeah, I think that's all I have. Do I have any questions?
Thank you, Cynthia. I just want to note, if you're able to get the video, before the panel is over, I would be happy to send it as a link to the guests, or we could play it after the Q&A. I wasn't able to open the MP4, but feel free to send it to us.
Can I share? Or, because if I could share, I could do it probably.
If you see the share screen function, then you can theoretically share as long as the technology cooperates.
Okay, let's try this.
Yeah, give it a try. And I just want to continue encouraging people to drop questions in the Q&A. I see we have several that have been answered, which I will go through and read. And then we'll also go through questions that were sent to us by email and dropped on the social media pages. No, we still see you. Let me know. Just throw your hand up if you get it, and we'll come back.
Sorry.
No worries. So we have a whole bunch of answered questions, and I'll just go through them and read them. And if the panelists who answered them want to jump in and add anything, I invite you to feel free to do that. So we have somebody that said they live in a privately owned 48-unit rent stabilized apartment building in Brooklyn. And during the pandemic, with the eviction moratorium in effect, the landlord has been placing letters under tenants' doors reminding tenants the rent is due. Further, he has been going to tenants' doors asking for the rent payments. Is he violating the tenants' rights? And Paul answered that and said, as long as the behavior doesn't rise to the level of harassment, it's generally not a violation of the tenant's rights for the landlord to ask for rent. You should carefully document any communication with your landlord and keep track or take pictures of any documents they send you. go ahead and dismiss that. If anybody else wants to jump in, feel free.
I just wanted to say that, like, we can't be mad that landlords are, following protocol by handing those papers out, but sometimes when landlords are handing folks these papers when they in fact are paying the rent, I just wanted to let folks know, don't get up and leave the apartment. These are tactics that landlords use to push folks out. And also, because a lot of people that was getting these forms, they thought those were straight eviction notices to leave the apartment. Want to let them know that that's not the time to leave. You have to comply with those forms and then go for it. That courts were closed, but in fact, you can still apply. You can still apply for that form. And right now that we do have rental assistance coming, when in fact you can apply for it, that can save you. You want to make sure that if you don't know, don't act as fast, always ask. And we have so much great people on the call today that can also reach out. Y'all can also reach out to and get questions from.
Great, thank you. We have another question. It says, first, we live in a privately owned 48-unit rent stabilized apartment building in Brooklyn. Monthly rent is about $1,000 for a 1-bedroom apartment. Annually, the former landlord issued a check for the interest accumulated from the tenant's security deposit. However, since the new owners purchased the building 5 years ago, we have not received these checks. Instead, the landlord sends out a W-9 form. Do tenants have to complete and return this form to the landlord? Paul said that this is a specific question that really calls for specific legal advice. He advised to call the hotline at 917-661-4500 and ask to speak with a housing attorney. Thanks for that answer, Paul. The next question is, for the past 6 months, our building elevator has constantly broken down. On average, only 4 days weekly, the elevator was in service. On more than 3 occasions, the fire department came to the rescue the individual stuck in the elevator, and we made numerous 311 calls. Although it's currently working, it's not reliable. Can we ask for a rent deduction from the landlord? What are our best options? And Monique Thomas answered that. She said if an HCR inspector finds that all elevators in the building are inoperable, this may rise to a decrease in building-wide services and be eligible for a rent reduction petition. And more information here, and she dropped the link in the Q&A. So if you go to the Q&A and you look at the answered questions, you should be able to see the link there, and maybe our staff who are on the call can also drop that in the social media chat for anybody watching there. That's tough, though. I hope the elevator gets repaired. It's a dangerous situation. The next question is from somebody that's been living with their husband and 2 children in an apartment for the past 20 years. The building is multiple units, privately owned and rent subsidized. Their husband's name is on the rental lease. However, they are now separated and he lives at his mother's place. Management is refusing to place their name on the lease too. How can they get their name on the lease? So Paul said that this is a specific question that calls for specific legal advice. Again, he dropped the number in the chat. It's 917-661-4500. And you can give them a call and ask to speak with a housing attorney. Unless anybody else wanted to weigh in, I can move on to the next question, which is, 4 months ago, due to the landlord's negligence, a fire erupted in our apartment. And we lost clothing, furniture, appliances, electronic devices, and laptops that my children used for distance learning online classes. The landlord promised to provide hotel accommodations for my children and me while he repaired our fire damaged apartment. He also agreed to replace the items we lost in the fire. He has now rescinded his offer and is demanding we pay outstanding rent arrears. Monique said that if the apartment has been damaged due to fire, you can file a decrease in service complaint, similar to with the elevator situation with HCR's ORA to determine if you're eligible for a rent reduction. And she dropped the link there in the Q&A as well. We're getting through our Q&A. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in.
I'm ready to show the video if you're whenever you're ready.
Oh, you got it. Okay, great. Go ahead. Can you just tell me how long is the video? We can't see it.
Yeah, excuse me,
sure.
Sabrina, sorry to interrupt. Before you go to the video, just to address the question regarding the tenant who actually experienced the fire. At NHS, we also implore tenants to also get renters insurance for situations like these. So rather than having to depend on your landlord, to address these issues, a lot of times, which are probably not, any damages to the apartment, or even situations where there's a burglary, or let's say another tenant leaves the bathroom tub over and you get a flood. We do encourage people to get renters insurance to actually to protect a lot of your private assets, whether it's your computer, your furniture, or jewelry in these situations. And we do give workshops on it. We don't sell insurance, but we do talk about how premiums are calculated and the different types of coverage. There's a tenant that you need to be aware of. So I just want to let you know about that. So sorry for the interruption, but I just want to get that out there.
No worries. It actually helped us out because I think I was able to get the video, and if it's okay with you, Cynthia, I'll play it on my screen. Here we go. You guys can hear, right? Yeah.
Home is the center of life. It's a wellspring of a person's being, of a personhood, and every living human being deserves that. Before COVID, there was 92,000 homeless people in the city of New York.
Under Cuomo, it has increased 41%.
Estimated 1.3 million tenants who are going to be suffering coming. Tenants are being harassed by landlords. You have tenants living in apartments that's not fit.
Housing is a human right, and we all deserve that dignity.
Thank you, Cynthia. I'm glad we got that worked out.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Sharing the video with us. We can continue through the Q&A. I see we have 7 questions left in the Q&A, and I know we have more through email. So we have somebody who has 2 questions for our attorneys. The first is, I think we actually, did we address this one yet? Yeah, we did address this one. This was a specific question that we already answered. And the next one is they were defendant in a holdover case in Brooklyn that ended in January of 2020. And this February, their landlord reopened the case. This person wants to know if their case, being an older case, will be called up first before the new cases when the moratorium is over on May 1st. Paul said that there's quite a backlog, so it's not clear exactly when it will be calendared, but we recommend you closely follow your mail and email for a court date and keep track of the court calendar. If you appear virtually or otherwise, be sure to ask for an attorney. You can also call for specific advice at the number in the chat. Thanks, Paul, for the answer. We have another question from Giselle, who said 4 months ago, due to the landlord's negligence. Oh, we got that one too. Another guest in our chat said that the 4th program of rental assistance that's forthcoming by ODTA, as mentioned by Joseph, they would like further information on that. And Tyrone dropped in and said to visit HCR's website for updates. I know we are still waiting for information on how those funds will be distributed. But did anybody else want to jump in on that point?
I would just say check OTDA's website as well, because we're doing that. We expect it to be announced probably on the governor's website first and then there. But
okay, great. We'll follow that as well. So Giselle said I think the landlord has rescinded the offer. Did we address that question, Rebecca? Oh, was this a follow-up to the earlier question? I'm gonna move on to a Facebook question while we figure that out.
Yeah, it was a follow-up to the question you already answered.
Okay, and we already addressed the question about NHS serving outer boroughs. So that question was answered too. We have a question from Barbara in the chat. She said, do you help if I live in a 3-family home that is now up for sale? I just lost it. She said, do you help if I live in a 3-family home that's now up for sale? I'm a senior. Do I have any rights? I cannot afford to move. I have lived here for 49 years, but have no lease. Paul said, as a general rule, if a landlord sells a building, they take on the tenants. If they want to get you out, they still have to go through the housing court process. Buying or selling the building isn't a shortcut. Our office is happy to hear more and give specific legal advice. You should call our advice hotline at the number in the chat and speak with an attorney. Tyrone also weighed in and suggested calling the Brooklyn Legal Hotline. I think that's the same one, or NHS at 718-469-4679. Since you don't have a lease, you're a month-to-month tenant with less rights than a person with a lease.
Yeah, can I just add if you've lived there for 40 years, you do have to still get a 90-day notice before they can bring a holdover case against you. Anyone who's been living in their rental accommodation for more than 2 years is entitled to a 90-day notice of termination, even a month-to-month tenant, and that's a change from the 2019 rent reform laws.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate that. Yehuda asked, what happens if you don't qualify for a free legal aid or Brooklyn Legal Services attorney, but at the same time, you can't afford a high-priced LNT attorney that can cost, upwards of $4.25 an hour. Paul said you should try calling our hotline, and generally don't have the same restrictions for our advice hotline. And for full representation, we are taking more cases than we usually do because of the pandemic. And Humbert also weighed in and said the New York State Bar Association may be able to assist as well. So thank you guys for that. We have one open question asking if you could speak about the right to counsel. I'll leave that to Brooklyn Legal Services team.
Humbert, do you want to take it?
So I'm actually not part of the Right to Counsel program, but my understanding of what Right to Counsel is that if you are in certain zip codes in particular, and if you're below a certain income, you're going to be able to qualify for an attorney in terms of, at the very least, advice, getting some advice. The attorney will weigh your case and along with other considerations and factors, and make a determination then whether or not to give you to provide representation as well too. I don't know. Is there anything else to add, Paul?
I mean, I would just add that right now, the zip code restrictions and even some of the income restrictions that usually accompany the Right to Counsel program, which is also sometimes known as universal access to counsel, which is a little confusing. A lot of those income restrictions and zip code restrictions are lifted. Right now, the housing court is trying, and we have no idea how long this is going to go on, but the housing court and HRA are trying to give everyone whose case is on the calendar the opportunity to at least connect with a lawyer. So it's possible that even if you wouldn't have qualified in March of 2020, you might qualify now. Like I said, we don't know how long it's going to last, but it's worth asking. If you have a housing court case, it's certainly worth asking the judge or the court attorney for an opportunity to speak with a lawyer, and generally they'll make that happen. And if they don't, call us at the number in the chat.
Okay, thank you again. Our Q&A seems to be mostly cleared. We did invite the community to send us questions via email before in advance of the event, and we have several of those to go through. I just want to note that we have only 10 more minutes to address these questions, so I'll get through as many as we can. And I'll start reading from the email questions. We have someone that said, hello, I'm a single mother of 3. My question is, throughout the pandemic, I lost a lot of hours from my job because of COVID-19. I filed for rent relief and they were able to help me with only $83.07 for back rent. My rent is almost $1,800 a month, and I sent my landlord most of my income tax return payment and stimulus, but I still owed January through April this year. I'm still in the same job, but my work hours have decreased. I need to know, what do I do to pay back my balance? And I hope some of our state money is going to help this individual out, but I'll hand it over to our experts. If anybody wants to jump in, just feel free.
So I think, as a lot of our answers have been, but I think this is also a very specific question in which you should consult an attorney, just because there's a lot of things I still don't know about the concern you have that would help us better analyze the situation.
Okay, that's fair. And I think we're still, again, waiting for information on how the state and federal money will be distributed. So I'll encourage that person to reach out for individualized advice after the event. We have someone saying, can you please discuss the situation that people in hotels face? I'm homeless. I was recently able to get a room at a hotel for a few days, but I need a more permanent and stable place. I need to know who I can call to apply and obtain financial assistance to pay my room at the hotel.
I would generally refer that person to HRA for a program called CityFET, which generally does try to provide some voucher and money support for folks who are homeless to secure housing. The caller, or the emailer, I should say, can certainly contact their local job center, which is the term that HRA uses for their sort of the central welfare office. And I think that would probably be the best place. And they should specifically say that they're requesting information about the CityFEPS program. That's City and then FEPS, FHEPS. And we'd encourage them to reach out that way. And I'm really sorry you're in that situation.
Thank you, Paul. We have a good question here from someone who wants to know if rent increases, were rent increases legal after March 15th in 2020? My landlord said my apartment, which is affordable housing in this case, did not qualify for the rent freeze. And if I didn't put the extra money with security and send the lease signed back, I will be breaking my lease. They raised the rent over $100 a month.
Well, I guess it would depend on whether your apartment is regulated or not, but based on the question, I'm gonna make the assumption that it is regulated. My understanding is that, so the lease was March 2020, right? I believe from March 2020, there are permissible rent increases. However, if it's drastic, if you feel that it does not correlate to the increases, then you should contact us. You should contact DHCR.
Yeah, so just to piggyback off of that, if the apartment is rent regulated, there are permissible increases, but I believe at that time, March 2020, the percentage increase that was allowable was somewhere around 1 to 1.5% for a 1-year lease, and then for a 2-year lease, it might be 2%. So $100, your apartment rent would have to be on the higher side for that to be a 1% increase. So if this person asking the question is in a rent regulated apartment, we would encourage them to file an overcharge complaint with DHCR, and then a rent administrator will look at the registration history and make a determination as to whether that increase was permissible or not. If it is not permissible, the agency DHCR would make that determination and ask the owner, or require the owner, in fact, to roll the rent back to the legal collectible rent amount, and then also refund the tenant the difference between what was charged and what the owner is legally entitled to collect. If the apartment is not rent regulated, then increases aren't necessarily determined based on a percentage. Typically, if it's a market rate apartment, an owner can choose to charge a higher rent upon lease renewal, and there is no cap to that. But you did mention affordable housing. So, affordable housing doesn't mean rent regulated housing, but it sometimes can. So we need to know if it's a rent regulated apartment or not.
Can I just piggyback off you for a second? I just did a quick search, and it seems that the permissible increases for 1 year is 1.5%. For 2 years is 2.5.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, in case other people don't know what the rent freeze actually is that, so the RGB passed that from October 1st, 2020 to September 30th, 2021, that for rent stabilized apartments, there's a freeze on rent increases. So there's no increases that can happen during that year. If you have a 1-year lease renewal, that's your entire lease renewal. If you have a 2-year lease renewal, it's the first year. And then for the second year, starting after October 1st, 2021, you would be eligible, or you would incur a 1% increase only. So right now there is a freeze on increases for rent stabilized apartments, just in case people didn't know about it.
Thanks. Tyrone, did you have your hand up? Maybe not. I can't hear Tyrone. I see we only have 3.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm fine. I forgot it was up. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. I just noticed late. We have one more question I'll get to, and then I think we're going to wrap up our event because it's almost 8 o'clock. This person said that they've been dealing with an emergency health issue, including 2 major surgeries and out of work for 2 months. They filed the hardship declaration, but are nervous about the upcoming lease. whether they should try to find something else, or if the landlord is going to try to prevent this person from leaving or sue for the difference. They want to know what protections they have. Again, this is somebody that already filed the hardship declaration.
I mean, if they owe money but are otherwise paying ongoing, that might be a candidate for a one-shot deal with HRA, or it might be they may want to wait until the state money comes around without knowing exactly where that case is at, whether or not it's already in progress or not. It's hard to provide specific advice. If they do have a housing court case, the next time it is on, they should request an attorney. If they don't have a housing court case, they should feel free to give us a call at the number in the chat, which is 917-661-4500.
Okay, great. We are approaching 8 o'clock. So I just want to thank you all, Paul, Jordan, Humbert, Tyrone, Monique, Cynthia, Joseph. All of you were very informative, and I believe our audience will walk away from this in a better place. Again, I want to remind everybody from the audience to feel free to reach out to any of our panelists using the information that they provided. And to, of course, feel free to reach out to the Assembly office. We're here to support you for any of your needs. So thank you all for tuning in tonight. It's been a pleasure to have you join us, and thank you to our panelists and my colleagues as well who are on with us this evening. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.